Hello, Americans. Hello, people of the rest of the species volume. Through your names, although all names individually, all groupings, and all voicings for humanity, have been through systems and stayed systems tactical ulterior from the one that is hypernative pure, and as the Constitution, and as logic and nature of logic that could appreciate, that could explain and appreciate simultaneously the Constitution unabridged, the value of it being unabridged. I believe it is the Ninth Amendment that Judge Napolitano, with the YouTube channel Judging Freedom, he said that one of the amendments says that we have rights that are too innumerable to list, which is relative to where we have a whole bunch of negatives that we could make into hyper positives. But we have not addressed where the breaching method our founders demonstrated for us to address syntactically how the breaching method applied other things, others, ourselves to be blamed and to use functionally where the breaching method is a scientific value that nature shows to reason. The breaching method is a scientific value, not just with America's history. Our founders did not have free speech. The breaching method was entrenched through other identities already fact treatment nature enslaved, already pretending other by blaming other things, other themselves, and using truths too. In other words, like, oh, they're rich, they're wealthy. In other words, the individuals as leaders and the individuals as locations, areas, and states. There have been systems. There have been uses, therefore, of names because nature uses identity. Therefore, nature uses names, words. Every word is a word/value. Where this is about forever nature, each modern language. Anthony Watt, I am an expert on the nature of English grammar. In the intelligence community, I'm using the word intelligence community because we're going to appreciate where and how our founders left us to use as nature did. Nature does too. In other words, to demonstrate not to leave out that breaching method with reason. We're gonna the reason experts, all the natures of experts, certain type of victim/hyper victim, who had that self-value relative to where and to how predicate acts. I'm not a lawyer. Predicate acts with facts, for example, are one of the things. Black pupils, whites of eyes, having had other assigned to be communicated by by the breaching method, relative to where and to how we have stayed systems tactical ulterior from the one that is the value of the constitutional unabridged, and an appreciation of where and of how we are hyper additional nature that way, in the way we're supposed to. In other words, America and each modern country's leaders and all groupings that would voice for themselves, they're leveraged against every individual. So that because the order of the finite, a quality of fact-treating nature, the only ones that can be forced, think about it, nature shows us the only ones that can be forced properly to force a quality of fact-treating nature is an individual. Only an individual can defend the order of the finite. So a breaching method showed people to blame other things, others themselves, for what our founders told us to blame too. Distinctly from, but non-distinctly from nature too. So nature is hyper additionally, because it's right there to check if we're right or wrong. And yes, we're right. Our founders told us to get the Constitution unabridged. and everyone equal with the rights, even though they also told us to explain why and how they weren't equal. And they have other things, others ourselves, sickly distinctly by the experts on American history, blamed, and sickly distinctly by the A through Z styles of logic and natures of logic, where how formally and informally we have collusions also with foreign intelligence, overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time. How are you? Um, who is the best fighter right now? I don't know. I haven't been following well enough. I haven't been following. I used to watch one like HBO fights. I watch I like those old fights. I'm like I've seen it all. I like to shadow box towards the camera. I have to start training, but I have before the World Trade Center attack. I was in the Ninth Circuit Court as an observer, and names on both sides of that case have roles with names that were planting fake ties and fake natures of ties to me with people I don't know and others. In other words, the World Trade Center. They're involved with trade agreements and with natures of industries that never could defend themselves. Certain type of victim slash hyper victim that a breaching method employed. They never could have defended themselves and afford discerned proper syntactical uses of the values of the names of the sciences and of the names of value words. Every word is a word slash value, and this is what English was revealed to teach in ancient times before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced. And then the phenomenon of modern religious messengers, because there was already now a hyper syntactical possession over everyone, over all voicings, over how we are individuals grouped and together per nature with identity. Therefore names. See, we're in a semi-ancient fact nature trap. So we should not and cannot, because in nature will, if we're going to be proper reason that we're capable of being and descriptions of it, we cannot leave out those constants like why and how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, and decipher that goes with even if that wasn't left for decipher the famous phrase or the famous sentence, don't shoot until you see the whites of eyes. Whoever made that a constant, or at least in the past, that's my favorite fighter. To one way, but all fighters, Mike Tyson too. Like Mike Tyson, in some ways, Thomas Hearns definitely is one of my favorite. Is for like one in some ways, that's the most entertaining because I like to watch the guys with the reach. But boxing, see if you any boxer who tries hard, you're gonna hear them making the shush sound because of the song. But to hear the song boxing with rest, like with songs, the way in other words, the hyper, where the identity of other nations, some ways, ours looks more like it and theirs looks more like ours. This nature shows us to be value independence and to value simultaneously unity, tactical ulterior. From all voicings of unity we've heard, therefore self-defended. Note with nature self-defended. Suits and ties counters. Descriptions of manners that are involved with predicate acts with facts methods with that original method that is used at all location /s. So our founders told us to examine. Our founders communicated for us to examine how that method employed people to go about speaking about values and or means leaving out how those means were employed to torture themselves, every A through Z, names A through Z, and to have them pretend other, or to sense that body, even if that body was a majority, even of countries. This came from semi-ancient times with no one discerning. This was hyper sophistication here before our founders were born. Our founders who had to leave fake motivations and fake, they had to entertain speech and nature of speech and subject treatments that they didn't want entertained. That's why, in other words, that's why the Constitution, they told us to get it unabridged. This preaching method knew that we would only be able to count, I say the human species volume, A through Z, from before modern countries' names. And while they were becoming, it was measuring who was going to adapt. And to an extent, and then they would hurt, and they would do all kinds of things to who would to being a unity or being an independence. Everyone was tied to the database. Before computers, America's republic is tied to databases. It is tied to it as what is greater than and more finite than the value of Boolean logic, and to the uses of all names with the array of and the appearance of sides with that. Where it is value to discern the difference between experts on the law who are good or bad. And that is increasingly a problem because what the uses of the difference of that is worse. And this is relative again, / hyper-relative to where other things, others, ourselves are blamed, where nature and our own reasons, nature additionally from how our reason works, and how our reason works, the order of the finite, the order of what is grouped, active, and the order of what is the extent of the future we know about before it comes, per its system though, per where and how it communicates about what is constant and what is variable. And what is constant per its system is about forever nature. Time, too, is grouped this way, discernible. We discern the identity of hyper-relativity / relativity, distinctly right to left and left to right, also non-distinctly, per where and how we discern it. Yin yang. Again, we hear this name. This is the constant. And there are proofs it is more probable and practical to convict, to opine, convict, theorize. Yin yang and alpha and omega were revealed by the ancients to be taught together. Yin yang is about the constant. Alpha and omega is about the variable. Boolean logic and the history of each of the sciences, the descriptions of them self-valued, the nature that goes along simultaneously with defenses of that. The only way they could have gotten away with it, and as observer, that's what it was, is the way the breaching method showed and shows. Identities, we see everyone missed too, how identity, nature shows us. We are hyper additionally per the phenomena being its identity. The identity that is all parts of space / existence. It uses how it is the value of what really happened or was communicated or again, it's its own way. It's not a bridge, hypernative pure. It is showing us the increasing value of us needing to attend with a proper quality of fact-cheating nature regarding precedent, statutes, syntactical functioning of humanities, and this is inseparable from how logic works, greater than and more finite than how Boolean logic works, and how while as that way too, named after a guy who all sides individually grouped in together, all names were and are roles, keeping other things, others, ourselves blamed for the real causes and uses of database relationships involved with where and how all locations /s. For example, sickly distinctly in the southern colonies and in the northern colonies, and through sickly distinctly already having been syntactically possessed /hyper possessed, individually grouped in together all locations, areas, and states, everywhere the species volume is. Therefore, any individual leader, no matter how powerful they get, they're going to have to entertain natures of individual defenses of finite, with passions and emotions fake about their own or others, and tactically delusions raw. Otherwise, this would have been revealed. So there are collusions, and the difference between the corruption at the formal locations or and then further intercampuses of all ages and natures and the differences of them. This uses and has used all investigations and investigators as collusion /s. For example, where and how they know and knew. These are people that attach. This is the suburbs were designed for an identity theft, fraud, slander method to get people to say this person's good, this person's bad, or whatever. They're increasingly fabricating audio and video transcripts since semi-ancient times. So the Indic branch, they were victimized since they were kids, told to blame other things, others, ourselves, where answers were things like predicate acts with facts, what laws with color were about, where the color came into it. Nature shows us that the breaching method knew that nature was going to show us there's a human fact, human nature breaching method as a scientific value. And simultaneously, it was going to show us that proper descriptions of reason are tactically ulterior from the quote experts on that, the people who know the most about quote the knowledge of good and evil, unquote. I'm quoting that, even though it says in the Old Testament you don't have to quote it, because the people that are defending the Old Testament, and people who are defending the Quran, and the people who are countering them, and atheists, have collusions on off Central Connecticut State University with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with co-defendants of his and with their family members, with a whole bunch of people from Hartford Hospital, and on and off the campuses, Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have Hartford courts and their family members, and New Britain Superior Court's family members, and Connecticut's District Court's family members involved with news locations and with body dumping spots, with predicate acts, people from my town with the name DeMoro and Cololo. They have wire crimes and mail crimes with the FBI, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and intelligence families who were their teachers, who are putting fake things in databases. Kids that didn't even have class, and they're making fake exceptions. See, programming uses exceptions and appreciates its exception nature, where how people want to debate things where that aren't debatable. And where and how they want to get away with this, they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents that are hyper evidential evidences, where and how forgiveness is important, because one of the things that the interbranch have recorded themselves being doing while used remotely, not just there, but then they showed them how to hide that other locations, and it showed all that. It's increasingly doing that at locations other. They're doing little tricks to pretend behavior. There are a whole bunch of people I don't know the names of, and like they make phenomena where you're gonna walk by people in hallways, and they tell people's names. These are people that are supposed to be experts on the mind and on the body. These are intersciences collusions. And they attach people to fake conversations. They pretend that they say a whole bunch of people are bad. Weathersfield police have people with the name Schumack, who already had roles with all kinds of natures of convictions, and people on off the state corrections offices, on off the state judicial offices, with some KKK themed, black themed, and Confederate flag themed people roles with child defenders, leaders of the kids, including with women judges, certain type of victim / hyper victim, where and how also our founders left us to demonstrate how the same names had and have timed roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and as names from Connecticut intercities leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense, involved with a whole bunch of natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders. It's demonstrable how this is relative to where and how. It is a scientific value and means to observe, remote uses of people pretending integrity, identities of logic that are relative, to uses of polling questions, for example, to pretend that everyone agrees about this or this is scientific evidence, where they're forcing equality of fact-checking nature to collusions with the people who answer the phones at communications locations, at social locations, at news locations. I am not a licensed journalist. The reason that we're supposed to be licensed is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, used. And the difference between that is used by a breaching method that already used and uses further our own identities of law with that. So, where and how the identities of law, a certain type of victim / hyper victim, to treat it properly, you have to care about what has been maintaining the torture, extortion, in fact, human nature slavery of the kids of New York City, sickly distinctly from the kids of Hartford, Connecticut, sickly distinctly from the neighboring suburbs and countries. Where it's complicated and where it's simple is tactical terrier with the descriptions of everyone. This is hyper programming too. Ugh. This appreciates lists in ways that you all can't afford to discern. You have to value uses of names. But this person, the difference between the greatest teachers and the worst ones is recorded, used, constant. Why would it not be? In other words, people say, "Oh, they want the nature of debate." We have black people as whites of eyes. It's about we have a different eye, color eyes, and the same color eyes at the same time, and there are exceptions. Some people have completely the same color eyes. We all know black is a part of fake systems. The second we hear it applied to skin color, not one is pure black, not one is pure white. And you guys left out and leave out, we discern, reason discerns. You leave out the breaching method as a scientific value to reason. It is increasing value and it has relativity slash hyperrelativity. The theory on relativity by a breaching method, then through others, including through the people who write theories on relativity. They're used to measure and maintain that the identity of relativity slash hyperrelativity is left out and other things stay blamed for what is. Everything is inseparable now, not just from the identity of nature, but from the identity of this breaching method, inseparable and inseparably present, thank God, from all syntactical finite groups and simultaneous values and U slash S of them, because this is a breaching method that is a collusion slash S. Where and how names on all sides of criminal and civil cases originally and still, and the lawyers, and the names with the courts, they are and have been used to hide how databases are used to stack fabricated audio and video transcripts and identity thefts and frauds roles with methods roles. Federal evidence is crimes, federal rules of evidence is crimes, and federal evidence is and rules methods, predicate acts methods. So don't forget that inseparable too. That's how we can discern the breaching method. It is a predicate acts with facts method against our color of eyes, against our communication. From that coming to, from, as, with, while, as, with, and for each self. And heaven and hell, they're demonstrably having been revealed as scientific values per the system of science that is not just the republic for which we stand still abridged, constitution nature. Therefore physical names and manifestations. We are hyper additionally also voicings for the ground. For it's the ground's nature. We can no longer appreciate the details of the finite. Why we hunger simultaneously, why we thirst, black pupils. Tactically ulterior our systems to answer these questions, natures of experts, and they are and have been relied upon. Opining with serious natures of organized crime juxtaposed. Specifically because this breaching method knew that they would counter things like criminal enterprises, defending it as collusion, syntactical collusion slash S. Certain type of victim slash hyper victim. Our founders left us to correlate the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, insidiousness of the logic A through Z, and the interbranch at the same time. All exceptions, the exception nature. And there, and relative to this constant, as nature's use of communications with the constant, and the breaching methods, and roles with the breaching method. A new trinity from some ancient times, self-valued because of the remote uses of all identities of logic, of all identities of practical reason, voice slash voicing, voicings plural. One identity of hyperrelativity makes more of itself as the hyper subject, with the extent we have to discern it, to study it, its complete self. Even though we're only the smallest portion of itself. We could observe its complete identity of relationship to itself is it stays inseparable from all parts of itself, distinctly finite, distinctly grouped, and distinctly simultaneously. For how to describe how it is showing us the hyper invisible but still discernible. It is why there are 7 names for the verb. For example, that is discernibly hyper invisible with a verb or its other names like participle nature, the present participle, past participle. I say nature because they are the one identity, regardless of which one's used. Every identity, even a value, is only increasing even after it is gone. Even if it is made up. This is the hypervolume science. It is inseparable from all finite, grouped, and simultaneous details of what is made up. It answers our question. It does not debug like physical programming without appreciation simultaneously of hypercorrelation. Hypercorrelation can be used, Black pupils, simultaneously. Appreciation of lists that no one could afford discerned. Because you have had lists, because reason appreciates lists. Reason appreciates finite details and group details. Tactical ulterior from how names A through Z, who are experts on, for example, quote, knowledge of good and evil, who are experts on the names of the sciences, who have their short words as collusions against also as natures against the short words that are using those truths that come with revelations. They sense and slander, extort, and when they identity theft, fraud, slander is one of the things that is the ways it is manifest non-distinctly, where we are all sickly distinctly, tortured, extorted, and in fact, human nature enslaved. For example, with other things, others, ourselves, blamed for slavery than our founders who had to counter extort the other founders, communicated for us to blame for slavery, which is the breaching method that was entrenched here before they were born. It had already designed the suburbs for this breaching method, had designed them tactically denatured to be reliant upon mass farming and to make those mass farmers, affected by this too at all locations /s. Every single place the human species volume is. And nature will only increasingly show us that it wants and needs us to appreciate and share our names and to appreciate and share our independence. But tactical ulterior from how all descriptions of independence and of unity. It is about unity being the species body of volume. It is about individual independence being why and how it is an individual of individuals. For example, and it shows us logic. So we have descriptions of logic that are reliant upon faith in others' names and natures of debate regarding that can't defend themselves without self-valuing. Criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents. And the difference between that as formal readers of the law, speakers for the law, people shutting up as the law, all tactical terror from where and how they should, as collusions too, because this uses the difference. This uses difference, and how it uses difference is tactical terror from how these systems' names have been allowed to appreciate formally. So there are lawyers associated with a former police chief from Weathersfield. One of them is named Cintron, and he's involved with people, with males and females, with the Coast Guard, with the military, with the Navy, with the Air Force, with Hartford Hospital, involved with World Trade Center names, with the predicate acts, also by others for them. These are people attaching everyone to fake companies. There's also exceptions in the differences of that is used. See, what used isn't used the intelligence community since they were born at, at formal locations knew increasingly they would have to pretend other locations because they already had that other ways at the same time. So we could also increasingly keep other things, others, ourselves blamed where and how nature and our founders left in other demonstrations. In other words, we're blaming other things other than ourselves. And there and where and how that is being, there are things like that that are pretended debatable that are not, is right where and how overt natures, distinct natures of organized crime and of criminal enterprises, overt ones, distinct natures of them, and private ones at the same time, with the interbranch families, their kids, and the quote adults and their family members, and the ones with all communications locations, Facebook family members, people associated with Facebook. I don't know if that was a Celeste Wells. I never had. She tried to pretend to. They took a picture of her next to me to make a fake exception. I never had a class. We never saw her around school. One time they made an exception, and that was in middle school. In other words, they put me and people I didn't see at all in middle school. There's people with the name Mendez. These are former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, is also one of them ones involved. Inter social media, like Twitter, and also involved with them with more upskirt pictures, and doctors with their own kids involved, with their own kids' pictures involved, so because they have remote uses of investigators. They say things on internet where they're switching identities, and then they make people block people, for example. Where the social media are a certain type of victim / hyper victim, and where the campuses are from off them. But this is through a method that keeps also self-evaluating, that everyone keeps self-evaluating in the past because of how they're keeping it with fact treatments, collusions. They're stacking little illusions in databases. They're keeping identities of jobs and of value treatments associated with that can't defend themselves without self-valuing at other locations where those identities and the names associated, including locations, they need to be spoken about and for other, and with appreciation of how there is positive and negative, and identity is about, and as science, tactical terror from these ones that are pretended. Fox News has recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed collusions with sexual groups and with counters to them who are collusions also with deans of campuses, distinctly from CNN and their family members and other people tied, therefore, intimately to, other ways, therefore. and they pretend passions and emotions when people respond to such. There are people, there are people all along Route 3 who will tell you they had been forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded. Also, some ways, their own ways, they were criminally foreign influenced. But they were also criminally foreign influenced by others of the intelligence community. And as names at the same time, collusions with timed uses of corners of streets and of names all along roads and routes, and ground details like next to parks, because of the relativity, not just of how investigators, all too, are being and have been used remotely criminally foreign influence. The difference of that, of the overt criminal enterprise, the private ones, and insidiousness to the logic of people A through Z. That difference is used for worse, but no one even discerns that inseparable from all subjects. But everyone would and could appreciate that. See, but the news is sickly, distinctly collusions against any Democratic voice or any Republican voice in a way to keep them self-value collusions with what hurt them since they were kids, which blamed other things other than themselves for what slavery was about. That's a sickly, evil thing, because nature is increasingly demonstrating to us again. The breaching method is one of the things that it is about. It is also about the increasing value of the breaching method to us. And our discussions of that used by the breaching method, no matter what country we are in, A through Z, these are the possession of semi-ancient names. This is when they defend the nature of debate regarding the value of Boolean logic, regarding the value of the descriptions of the histories of the sciences. They are tactically delusions wrought descriptions. They are reliant upon criminally foreign influence, factor, nature, quality, aspects, and natures, and uses of words like data and like evidence. And so they force, trick, hurt, and persuade news locations, even, to play music in the background regarding serious, like things like murders and like sustained murders, as collusions with that worse than war crimes method. So Hartford Hospital has a whole bunch of people with the military, male and female, inter-services, fire departments, involved with a whole bunch of countries, to have roles with corners of streets and buildings, planting evidences where we could discern remote uses, and then increasingly also singularly used by the breaching method. Through time, intercities connected. The difference between people choosing what school they go to, what you're going to do or not do, relative to what employed the suburbs the way they are manifest, reliant upon food from other locations, sickly distinctly from the cities, and how this breaching, in other words, and how this breaching method also has suburban/urban and urban, with nature's demonstrations of that. The breaching method's roles and use of all locations/as. So names uses of not just the people, all names are valid. Everything is a thing. Every word is a word/value. So in and before the year 2023, I had revealed each letter of the English language spells a word, and each word spells a sentence. And this is also about the Trinity. That Trinity of the religion of the Bible, slash S was about through pantheism slash hyperpantheism before it became criminally foreign influenced. Tactically, without realizing, without trying to do that, but per the phenomena of where and how, having been forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to defend and use the names of the sciences, and then hide how those names were used, where and how foreign bodies knew they were going to do that. And they already painted themselves collusions, names on off the state of Connecticut corrections offices, have roles with former director of the FBI, with names on off the state judicial branch offices, who have been planting between the campuses predicate acts to each one each year, sickly distinctly. Not legitimate. They have laws where people can do illegitimate things as ones with badges or intelligence, whatever. But they left out exceptions in exception nature. But then if you say that, they're going to pretend they didn't. That's why we have to deal with them forging and switching names and pretending not to understand people where they're not supposed to do that. And that's how they leak too. Harvard Hospital is leaking roles with the Leahy family and with the Violet family that have been planting evidences on my street with others through time. And I never even saw the Leahy family on my street. They also have roles with a Violet family where they used to live, different places they live, where their neighbors are involved with religious spots, like along Route 3, where they duck behind the religious sense and sensibilities, where and how they hide things where everyone's fake into branch. Only 3 branches of government, and the exceptions tied to them are also used criminally foreign influence. For example, there are courts and there are police forms that have collusions with the names next to body dumping spots. A Ray Clow and a Joe DeMauro recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with others that people from Harvard Hospital involved with them. They didn't say Harvard Hospital. They did with spots next with West Hartford locations, the spot reportedly of a serial killer. There are courts, judges, and prosecutors in the Britain Superior Courts and Hartford's courts that had roles of predicate acts over there with those names, and with others like a Kovinskis, who had roles of predicate acts for child abuses at the campuses I went to, as ones I never even know if they went to my school. One time I saw a Justin Kovinskis on my campus. I don't even know what grade he was in, what teachers he had, anything. All I know, he's involved with military confessions and medical, planting evidences. Central Connecticut State University has roles with him and with others all along Route 175, Route 3, and with people at Whiting Forensics involved on off the campuses and relative body dumping spots, and news with different narratives about that. Like the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso is involved with a whole bunch of people next to Fox Connecticut News with the intelligence community who have wire crime acts and methods with all the communications locations, and with WFSB attached me and others to fake conversations with themselves and change conversations with themselves and with others and about the World Trade Center attack. And they lied about legal cases, and they did it with others while they were roles with child offenders of mixed natures at the same time, while they were forcing that. And there are more involved then and now. And they're involving the names because that's one of the methods they do to hide while they're being used remotely. They already had roles with all kinds of natures of investigators. There are people with the name Perone and Kerr who are also Mendez police and Domain police, and people all along Route 3 and conjunctions to it like Hangdog Lane and Two Rod Highway, who are roles with predicate acts next to Fox News. Also at Hartford Hospital involved, names with identity theft, fraud, slanders, pretending through the mail fake transcripts, fake conversations with me, because they were the ones planting evidences on my street through time. Heather Hansen and Joe DeMauro said it has to do with their roles with home break-ins in the area out there. It has something to do with their roles with untimely deaths in the past, and then in the future tied to it. Someone lifted a hand from across the street. There's a Ryan Lewis and or Ryan Cleesa. He switches name, people with switching names roles, who used to live here, and his brother Terry have roles with elderly homes and with the people involved with the child offenders on off the campuses. And at the corners, like at the corners of Church on Church Street, Wethersfield, and Southstein Highway and Town Line Drive, has something to do with their roles with a whole bunch of different countries, and they're pretending, they're leaving out the foreign names by trying to say things and make them, they're putting predicate acts collusions with judges and prosecutors on social media so that people will block people. And then they can make it look like they're conversing with others and they're trying to do investigators legitimately. The FBI has roles with the Wethersfield Police, with a whole bunch of other police departments, with wire crimes with the same house, involved with a whole bunch of judges with the same house, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with this, whole bunch of names on off the state corrections offices, off the state judicial branch offices, criminally foreign influence, identity theft, fraud, slanders against me and against others. Then they pretend they were legitimately fakes about themselves growing up. In other words, and about others. And they can't be honest about what they think about their own emotions or what they think about other people's emotions. And what you'll see is actually recorded a bunch of little tricks. With Judge Napolitano, I asked him many times, they have to pretend people don't understand people. Now, he's probably maybe will help. But there's ones I need the ones I never had communications with, in all exception nature, that were used criminally foreign influence and collusions. So they have black, white, female judges involved with a whole bunch of male judges and prosecutors involved with a Brian Silver and a Rick C.M. Faglione, with people with the name O'Brien, a Dennis O'Brien, an Andrew O'Brien, and Timothy O'Brien, and people with the FBI with the name Ian, and other agencies and police forms involved with on and off the parks and the spots next to it with mayors. There's a former Mayor Gold, and there are neighbors of his involved with medical corruption with kids and wedding forensics in the past, and then now in the future is increasingly involved with the people with uses of relative home break-ins in the area and thefts. More than 5 connected, and these are people involved with the uses consciously of how there are not as many deaths and suspicious murders and suspicious deaths in Wethersfield. People with those same names have collusions with and as ones also on and off and next to every place, who are ones timed collusions with identity theft, fraud, speaking things to make it look, to leave a record, make it look like people communicate and know each other who don't at all. And with ones that were never even, they don't even have that, but they fake that too with them. A Joshua Julian is with this. So the interbranch, they lie about their motivations, and they lie about why people are using their names, including the branches of government. When do they have integrity, black pupils? When did they have the integrity too, to put passions and emotions, pretending integrity? That's relying upon pretending value, that the voting is value where it is not. They have criminally foreign influence uses of all words / values like voting. Wethersfield town offices increasingly making confessions because relative to also when they with their mouth shut, they've been forging and switching names. The Wethersfield police, where how they communicated, then they pretend people are saying bad things about the police. They force equality of fact treatment nature as collusions with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. There are people with the name Peruta, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved on Facebook with people on with a Facebook people with the Facebook page of the Weathersfield Police and people with lawyers of a police chief Centron, involved also with his family personally, criminally foreign influence, and with elections locations in Weathersfield, with them through time, roles with all instances, used criminally foreign influence. That's collusions with what as people that went to each campus I went to. They're attaching everyone to faked and changed. They're doing they're putting their identity theft, fraud, slanders, and they're exploiting at other locations. So Central Connecticut State University has roles with a whole bunch of people through time who have predicate acts on my street, as their roles with predicate acts with facts there, and as their roles with the same names. These are ones from other areas too, and that's how they get people to use each other's names or not and lie about how they feel about people, because they're lying about emotion. Emotions are about nature shows us. Emotions serve a function to show if someone's going to bring that quality of if someone is that quality of factual nature that uses exceptions and exception nature the way it does as a system tactical terror than these with bullying logic too. And look how that sounds like bully and what they've been pretending to be against while for it. See, they have the identities of locations communicate other than they communicate while pretending other. They have applications about that where they apply that where they assign functionally uses of identity slash IES and the identity of value progression to sense and to screen for the breaching method, which there are proofs it is more probable and practical to convict, is operated by a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, the one that originally conceived modern, semi-ancient names, individually grouped and together, voicings of humanity, collusions with uses of them now still, leaving out how the database, the quality of factual nature was criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, to keep the names uses, leaving out the breaching method. That's an additional name. So we're going to have to call it a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. And we're going to have to reveal that nature reveals the ACE Act, the Anti-Hyper-Archetypal Criminal Enterprise Act. Because the breaching method measured and maintained people using words like and subject treatments like guns. And there are victims advocates associated with Sandy Hook victims who are collusions with more names at Sandy Hook campuses and at the prisons and at the courts, involved also with further FBI with child abusers, leaders of kids, and tactically delusions wrought, medical corruption, their timed roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, people on off the state corrections offices, they're putting the readings of subjects. They have the phrase criminal insidiousness. They have the phrase criminal justice at Central Connecticut State University. The breaching method from off that campus measured and maintains them collusion /S at other locations, where and how they are recorded reading statutes that give them the rights to lie and do sick things, where they don't have those rights. Oh, we're trying to test to see if this or that. Get down. So they have more with the Facebook pages of the schools involved with different natures of predicate acts and organized crime, and bodies pretending to be against racism, prejudice. Oh, this person used this word. They have these locations, these religious locations. They have Jewish community centers involved with offenses of elderly and kids at the same time, with the ones that do each campus connected. They're pretending they're putting legitimate things in campuses and then about corrections. That's how sick you guys have left it. White advise people pretending they speak for science, pretending that are groupings, have not been and are not being used criminally for and influenced by people pretending they could speak for the law, A through Z, not even a lawyer. I'll delineate your criminally foreign influence, fact treatment, nature, quality aspects in nature from your tactical delusions. Now, and you guys are pretending it hurt your feel. Oh, you can't be honest about your feelings. Lawyers, judges, please, Judge Napolitano, follow mandated law for the Connecticut interbranch with too much of cowards, with the Weathersfield police, and with the exceptions tied to the intelligence tied to them. See, the military has rules with databases at the campuses. They have rules with each age of fact should be nature where there is medical corruption that is a whole bunch of different natures of organized crime. This breaching method, it's concentrated there. They have to run in and hide live progressions. How you got? How you doing? How you doing? So this is Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom is a YouTube channel. I've been trying to get them because the Connecticut interbranch has been forging and switching names, and they've been rules with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes with lawyers of Weathersfield Police and a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence to Corrupt Organizations Act. His lawyer, Robert Chevalier, is also one of the names on and off Central Connecticut State University in New Britain and on and off Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. They had roles planting predicate acts with other nations involved leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed there's a guy, Dina Velis, that some judges and prosecutors forced collusions with them, identity theft, fraud, slanders against me and him, fabricating and putting fake motivations for why and how I know them. And these are people that are involved with criminally foreign influence conversations with my teachers from off the campuses that are involved with predicate acts methods. I recorded, and I recorded them pretending other, and then leading up to the World Trade Center attack, they forced, tricked, hurt, persuade Saudis to roll with them, and the Saudis forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded our sides to roll. In other words, neither side had possession of themselves. There are people. So there are people tied to a Daniel King and to his mother and father and neighbors of theirs. I don't know all the names of them, but there had been roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, also as intelligence bodies, where and how investigations used criminally foreign influence are and were pretending other into databases. There are people pretending passions, emotions, and using truth for lies regarding their motivations, regarding the value of data or evidence, or how to discern who's telling the truth or not. So one of the ways is how mandated laws prevented offensively. I don't know if Ron, were you one of the people who mentioned that there was a officer powers? There are people with the Weathersfield Police Department's Facebook page involved further with the Facebook pages of the campuses with the names at courts, a whole bunch of names from Connecticut, New Britain Superior Court, some with Connecticut District Court, and spots next to the courts, and next to on off Hartford courts are people involved with New Park Avenue and schools along Park Street, and spots at the end of it with men and males and females with the intelligence community, sickly distinctly, but also sickly not distinctly, per the breaching method. But that's used for them to jump in with passions and emotions, force quality of factory nature roles, including in ways people miss, where and how they attach family members to fake conversations with each other, and through the mail and as collusions with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. So increasingly, it's something to do with their roles with the intelligence community next to the next to the news locations. The news locations recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they're being coached, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to pretend other too. With pretending to be happy and pretending to be not relative and pretending the motivations about their money, their jobs, when that's only differentially true. And it's increasingly not true because they have people who answer the phones who have roles with the news fabricating, identities that have fraud slanders. Then they have placements for ads for companies to help people if they had identity theft because they couldn't have legitimate help. There are collusions with the people at Weathersfield town offices through time, involved intercities with various natures of organized crime, and with all the nations in the news. They have roles with that people with the United States military, criminally foreign influenced, on Valley Crest, on more was in Morgan Circle, the spots next to the parks in Hartford and Weathersfield, in Newington. People involved with criminally foreign influence uses of our military, of the EMS people next to West Hartford locations with that spot with the name Demoro and Cololo tied to them. Involved with a whole bunch and Violet, Mark Violet, and Mike Violet. I never had a verbal conversation with Mike Violet. They try to make a big picture of me, fake ties to them. Then these are intelligence families that are criminally foreign influenced with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time. Medical families that are putting fake things in databases at other locations, fake motivations. Increasingly, people at Whiting Forensics have roles with predicate acts with them at crime scenes before the crime scenes happen, and to force child abusers. These are also people into religious spots. Has something to do with their roles with religious spots on a religious spot on and all along, and just because it's on the Route 3, and they have Jewish community centers, just because it's tied to but they have people pretending passions and emotions regarding what they hear, like if it's anti-Semitic or not, because they have collusions with uses of difference where they're pretending passions and emotions to bring things before courts to have collusions. They never stopped having collusions with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases and lawyers on both sides and names of the hallways of the courts, everyone's family members, people at corners of streets tied to people they know. They're increasingly need to hide lie progressions. They increasingly need to hide their own natures because you guys have blamed other things for predicate acts with facts roles. Roles. You're leaving out, not just leaving out, you're left out. You're forcing it breach state. Before the narrative, they had to close a window to keep secrets. Was the Constitutional Convention narratives in natures. There was already a breach entrenched. Now one has ranked vaccines. And the members of the maintenance of that outcome/S using everyone remotely from abroad through our databases, through the systems as criminal reengineering of the republic for which we stand, which increasingly self-values when it's unabridged. How it worked with and works with exceptions and exception nature. It was a modeling and is a modeling and design to appreciate yin yang about the constant and alpha and omega about the variable / constant. We could be systems other than its own, but it will demonstrate to us individually grouped and together. It is why there are every individual, a species body individual from the other species bodies, a species body of individuals. The syntactical possession / hyperpossession of the names of the sciences that have been assigned. Ron Adams, did you say that you know the people associated with the corner of the police? Whether you said, was that you who said the Weathersfield police associated with the corner of said something that I brought up the corner, but you said something that indicated because there were a whole bunch of people that on my street through time who from other areas who, per the tricks and of the Weathersfield police and of the agencies and other police forums, then it makes it look like the volume knew each other, and or they pretend they do that legitimately, and or they lie about the motivations for it, including when there's truths. They have predicate acts with facts roles. They have roles with six things against the kids of New York City, sickly distinctly on their campuses, or the differences between that too. It's always worse with the differences, but no one even pays attention there because you guys left out how location/s are used. So a Fred Grouzet has roles with foreign and domestic medical families who have roles with sequence shifts and private campuses and public campuses with people with the databases used criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, but also at other locations. And also forgiveness is because they need to keep everyone pretending that people are using others' names for reasons they are not. So Connecticut has courts switching and forging names. They have rules with I don't know the woman's name when since she was a kid. They have rules with people that made fake exceptions and had conversations with the intelligence community, with which a Mr. Emmett. People are involved with the conversations with a Mr. Emmett with uses of my name and others, where he has further recorded roles with child offenders, leaders of the kids, including medical ones, and names associated with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and not legitimately as military because they have roles with Kuwaiti military. They have roles with, uh, you know, the difference between the male. There are proofs to the ones with the name Bobby. There are ones with the name Bobby who are female and male, associated with roles with courts and prosecutors, associated with Chris Walters and with Ray Colillo and people with on off Fox Connecticut News and WFSB involved with predicate acts with them, also with Phil Colillo, with Whiting Forensics Through Time, involved also with overt criminal enterprises and timed collusions with wire crimes with the people involved in mail crimes and drugs and medicines crimes, and not legitimately. These are people that are roles with the agencies that deal with drugs and medicines, and the ones that, in other words, they're putting people to fake uses of drugs on a mass scale. Per their uses of that, a part of the tortures and extortion and slavery method that we have to observe by first appreciating how it is a torture, how it is a slander, identity theft, fraud, slander method manifest because of where and how it is manifest, non distinctly against everyone. That's the way it is manifest. So Tim O'Brien and Ray Colillo have been spreading fake ties and fake natures of ties to me, also with complete strangers, has something to do with their corners of the streets, names at the corner of the streets next to schools, and relative to that. Also involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders in the form of federal evidences crimes, remote uses, criminally foreign influence of investigations and of investigators. So Hartford Hospital has roles with that, and other hospitals have roles with this, with the same names, and with businesses next to them like Demoros and Aiello's. And Hartford Hospital said there's a Chet Casper, or I don't know if he said the name Chet Casper or Casper, because there's also his father. I don't know his father's name. Never met him. I never had a class with Chet Casper. You know how people are in the same class, the same grade? I never even saw him around schools. And one, I walk. There's a Mister. One time I walked by a doorway. There was a Mister Potter. And I never had any bad feelings about him or anything. Never personal or anything. I was, respectful in his classroom with manners. He has something to do with with family members. Could be faking their identities on Facebook, but that's why the police have been using switching names, but they don't have the right to lie. There have been collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, child offenders, as the names involved at the same time with the elderly homes. Now, these are prosecutors and judges, a whole bunch of probate or court judges tied to phenomenon at, of how they could even get away with pretending that legitimate reason what was or is behind how the veteran affairs buildings are manifest. The veterans, the means for them, or the elderly, and where and how that is tied to economic variables and constants. You guys left out how nature uses the variables and constant, how the breaching method uses a variable and constant, how the sciences do as collusions with their difference too, because that is again used too worse. Forgiveness is to keep things on actual acts. So Ron Adams, didn't you didn't you mention collusion? In other words, didn't you mention playing games with Weathersfield police, pretend not to understand? Let's get them onto paper. In other words, this is extortion. Has something to do a whole bunch of people tied to an Anthony Yagman and to his family, his brothers, and to his family involved with foreign and domestic medical families, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and people with the religious nutbags. Like there's a Miss Riley, and there are people with the name Riley associated with the intelligence community on off Central Connecticut State University, involved with the Board of Education, involved with these names like Calola with the Weathersfield Police Confessions. And the name, they didn't put a whole name, but they have the Phil Calola too. And they have these names planting evidences on all sides of my house since I was a kid, and all sides of their house. And they're used like my algebra teacher has roles with sexual abuses of the daughter that lives near me. I'm not going to say, you guys are playing games about privacy too, because you're preventing people privacy. You're lying about your motivations of it. You guys brought this up before Facebook was even invented too. That's why they can't put anything on paper. That's why they're pretending they have. I have to go to links to it. But recently in the news, they took clips of like people from the legal colleges speaking about the law and subject treatments. They can't defend their treatments, their voices, and or their non-voicings, and afford to have us defend it at the same time because of off-campuses uses of that each campus never went away, and the differences between them. There's a Watkinson school at the corner at one end of Albany Avenue that has roles with intelligence community and the courts involved with predicate acts and with their stories regarding murders. Now, see, now they can't afford to be dealing with serious subjects and controlling the vetting of data or information with social media. So we have to make a button to call that out because people can sense it. It's one of the, they're putting fake motivations to where there are foreign bodies, but there's also the hyper foreign body that keeps the foreign bodies blamed, where everyone keeps shut up. But there's a hyper foreign body too, and it kept some other. Before people took oaths, they were predicate acts with facts roles, needs and natures. So you think they had people in jail for all these years and they were innocent? They could have like that fixed those things. They put people want they have collusions at all crime scenes. That's what's recorded. Forgiveness is to not leave out the hyperforeign body. To discernment of it begins with valuing how what our founders left us to value, which is how we could discern the breaching myth by discerning how it forced self-value, the three branches of government, the difference between that and the intelligence, like prisons tied to them, like investigations tied to them, their campuses, their family members, their neighbors, those are people tied to them. They're putting fake motivations. So a former mayor Gold and his daughter have been pretending passions and emotions as roles with overt criminal enterprises, increasingly non-verbally demonstrating ties to that with the people with people make confessions for them and they non-verbally demonstrate it true. And increasingly they have roles with the names that were connected, the connected uses of them, U/S of them, who themselves they will tell you. You know, others pretended into databases about everyone at every age, and it's increasingly, and people want to go back because they already had conversations using other people's names. They don't really know them. Or we were just kids making up. They have predicate acts with facts with the difference between kids and adults when they were kids. The adults are putting fake things in databases, not the kids. But the kids are playing roles to give the adults the means to do that. These are roles with conscious uses remotely of investigations, of investigators, and of the names of the sciences, let alone of our own. Hyper additionally with this. So Whiting Forensics has further roles with names on off the Southstein Middle School and Wethersfield campuses, with judges and prosecutors who have been planting evidences also with the Facebook pages of the campuses, intercities, Rocky Hill campuses have roles with this, with fire departments, other natures of intelligence, foreign and domestic military, their roles with the kids, the parks and recreations, the kids, even the PAL gyms. They're gonna have a PAL gym in Wethersfield. Watch your minds. Get on paper one name in sequence. I'll show you how to think. And fix the fake transcripts. Wethersfield Police with other police departments and police forms and military ones. They're leaking how they have wire crime acts and methods, and some that are simultaneously mail crime acts and methods that are simultaneously roles with criminally foreign influence uses of investigators, and vetting of by perception, and as their roles with use of location/S. It's something to do with a whole bunch of people tied to the name Cololo and Mazzucato with Wethersfield Police Chief Cintron and 1 years ago have roles of medical offenders of kids with Elm Streets in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, and people on off the state judicial branch offices, also with the name Oliveri involved in shipping locations, etc. Please get them on paper, one name in sequence. Increasingly, they have roles of Middletown locations and people on Covington Street and on all sides of Central Connecticut State University are involved with intelligence families from Wethersfield. And ones next to these are people on Zion Street in Hartford, have roles of predicate acts on my street with identity thefts and frauds. There are proofs that they told lies about me to at the gyms because of the prosecutors and judges and their family members and intimate ties as ones with timed collusions with the foreign and domestic military and uses of deans of kids and leaders of the kids for child abuses, and how some of the parents are intelligence but they're parents at the same time. The difference between that and the intelligence name, none of them had integrity, and they're just changing what everyone says too. The Wethersfield police have been fabricating conversations with kids and then as adults as collusions with various natures of organized crime and uses of crime scenes, even if they're made up. They have roles regarding someone from Wethersfield, a kid who shot another kid. People associated next to that spot have roles with on and off campuses connected predicate acts. Brian Bonin and his neighbors, Maria Fazzino, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with a Mark Violet and a Nick LaPera and others. I don't even know his brother's names and his families. I don't know their names. I never had a conversation with them. They try to take a picture and make it look like I know them. There's proof that there's only one picture. and not even near them. I was never around his brother or anything like that. Because those are people that hung around together when I was a freshman, and right before we became freshmen, they were trying to plant evidences. So I never hung around with them. And then when we were a sophomore, I met some of them because I didn't try to meet them. They used to time where I was going to be, and then make it look like the volume's connected. These are people that would plant evidences that way. They're putting fake things in records. Whole bunch of people with Hartford Hospital and with intelligence community at every hospital. They've been speaking for mental health. They've been attaching people to fake locations, fake uses of drugs, fake uses of alcohol, fake ties, fake nature of ties to people. Increasingly, ones tied to mayors and other politicians. And because there are remote uses of the difference between the parties and the exceptions there too, overtly slash insidiously criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw black pupils. Don't leave out the predicate acts with facts. That's one of the things it is constantly about. How other was assigned to be communicated by the color black and or by the color white and or by with exceptions. And don't leave out how that breaching method still has other things others themselves blamed. So there are people associated with Wethersfield Police Facebook page to have further roles with child offenders, sexual, medical, overt criminal enterprises, private ones. Has something to do with their roles with names at the corners of streets, like corners on Church Street in Old Wethersfield and Sosnian Highway and Tura Highway, and the shopping centers along the Berlin Turnpike. There's a Jerry Kerr, who's one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with some mayors, planting evidences on all sides of my house with Wethersfield Police and other police forms and departments, and people with whiting forensics through time, involved with state police for interstates, with the Cololo family, and with the Oliveri family, and a Joshua Stryker, and others on Trinity College said that there are people, a whole bunch of people tied to a Mr. Neville involved with federal crimes against kids and putting fake things in that as collusions and with tactical delusions relative, identity theft, fraud, slander roles. Now there are also other names that are really the most responsible. So we have to get them on paper, like former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. He's involved with criminally foreign influence uses of the sense and sensibilities of judges and prosecutors, like the one at Hartford courts and in the Britain courts, involved with predicate acts with people from Wethersfield, intercities, and at West Hartford locations. I never had anything to do with anyone at that park. And in other words, in West Hartford, something to do with the park in West Hartford, where Joe Dennis and neighbors of his are involved with planting evidences in criminally foreign influence uses of investigators, and of Central Connecticut State University, and all along Route 175, and people tied to Two Route Highway / Hangdog Lane, involved with federal evidences crime, federal rules crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders with judges and prosecutors, fake motivations planting, fake honesty planting too. They're honest. They're lying about how they feel about themselves and how they feel about others. All exceptions in exception nature are used by as truths for lies too, because there are foreign bodies involved with the same names. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, timed uses of criminal insidious natures as unions, voicings, and voices, and collusions. So there are a whole bunch of people with the interbranch. There are only 3 interbranch locations, and then there were a whole bunch of exceptions tied because they have intelligence tied to them. But they're trying to make things that are simple. They're trying to make it simple. That's one of the ways we could discern them roles, preventing mandated law offensively and sustained per roles with uses of that. That's why it's important that to get the people to stop pretending not to understand, because that's one of the tie you guys are timed uses of location slash ad and sequence shifts. These are people that are collusions with names on all sides, used by others also of criminal and civil cases, and the ones next to the Ninth Circuit Court, and as the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center right before the attack. In that attack context and since, they have more predicate acts with WFSB in Rocky Hill. They have more predicate acts with Fox Connecticut News. They have more Connecticut. They have more predicate acts with WTNH, with wire crimes with them, with people on Twitter with upskirt pictures with the FBI, and as the ones with the male and the female, black and white female judges involved with sexual, medical, and other natures of abuses of boys and girls on off their Facebook pages. KKK theme, Confederate flag theme. They want to have a debate about what? They're hiding the sequence shifts. They're hiding how they were abused since they were kids. They can't think. Follow mandated law. Get on paper. Don't pretend we're saying anything bad about people. Oh, well, let's have a jury decide. They have the jury people involved, criminally foreign influence. Wake up. You guys have people, in other words, a whole bunch of people with the name Leahy has roles, criminally foreign influence uses of juries, seatings with other medical people and other judges and the FBI and other agencies and foreign and domestic military associated also with him on off Two Rod Highway and Hangdog Lane with ones named Dylan and with the ones with the name Jerry Miller. Officer Jerry Miller is one of the ones who was pretending to be filming me with a drone growing pot on my house about 3 or 4 years ago, about when the pandemic started popular broadcasting about that. It has something to do with people at Hartford Hospital have roles with all kinds of natures of medical corruption with the FBI and other agencies and military. Our military has roles with the World Trade Center attack, and then since to hide it, fake conversations about it. And these are people involved in interreligious spots. So you have little applications by that where they send someone in to go to religion to a prison or the hospital, and they defend that. Same way the religious spots are roles with the Facebook page. And I told them, I warned them I was coming. That's why they blocked me off Facebook. And the difference of that, they have Hotmail. They have people that stole a whole bunch of a whole bunch of poems I wrote with the FBI involved planting evidences on Trinity College, with the intelligence families tied to the ones involved with the predicate acts, with the wire crimes of Wethersfield Police, as the cliques that have been planting evidence on my streets since I was a kid. One time I forced people to call the police by telling people I was going to yell until they did, because I knew they would. You can't record the police. I made them record themselves, faking things where they don't have the right to lie. That's one of the things that we could discern. We have black people that identities the law use the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. So we're going to try to make Judge Napalo do the right thing, Judge Andrew Napolitano. And the right thing is what judges A through Z have failed to do. So we're going to have to force him to follow mandated law as the law itself directs he does, and get the Wethersfield interbranch onto paper timely, and have them describe my behavior and my writing and the descriptions, where it is clear and where it is not clear. The people that have been lying to Judge Napolitano, he's been self-valuing it all. So we're going to show how everyone that you guys came through campuses that communicated other things, others ourselves, for what nature, a new nature would be demonstrating, and our community, our founders. We're supposed to get a constitution unabridged. We could look at New York City and see that unabridged constitutional nature and reason did not speak for New York City's bodies individually grouped in together. All exceptions and exception nature, like of the wealth. They're measuring and maintaining all descriptions of wealth used to measure and maintain how we're the last to become a country. Any American wealth is people that are also citizens of all kind of other nations. And it's not the difference between that two. They don't care there or here. They're just using names. In other words, they're using locations through systems tactile than the hypernative one. Vaccine is fun, one way. Then he pray. Vaccines. I teach those things. So, but we have to follow mandated law properly. So they want to keep things too late. They follow it on time. In other words, can't even do business, even on internet, because of this, because of the nature of the law. And I shouldn't have to debate people about that. So, in other words, the proofs of it are here recorded. So, Weathersfield police have wire crime action methods with the FBI and other police departments, and they are leaking this every day. And these are people involved with the uses of the locations next to Hartford Hospital and the campuses connected intercities. Now, these are the people with the black/white KKK Confederate flag theme. They're not legitimately with that. They're not legitimately with thought. And this is nothing personal. You guys brought this up because your sequence shifts, as the ones with their extended family members and people out of Central Connecticut State University had roles with the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. Has something to do with a whole bunch of people with the name Gail King and tied to Gail King and family members of hers. And there were their roles with the spots next to Central Connecticut State University as the people collusions with intelligence from Weathersfield into branch through time. Since I was a kid, there were people from Central Connecticut State University involved with child defenders in Weathersfield. And the reason it involves and how it involves leaders of the kids is also involved how they're abusing their own kids. How the breaching method is abusing those kids too. To keep per this method, it keeps everyone's names lied about. They're putting fake transcripts because what is actually recorded are whole wire crime acts and methods and conscious uses of ducking behind other nations and sensibilities of that where they're shared here. A whole bunch of people tied to Koreans associated with ones with the name Demora and Kalol, also involved with Russians along Route 3, also with people with the name Casper and a Pete, I don't know his last name, that evolved all along Route 3 with I don't know what they're doing, but they have roles with the people at Hartford Hospital with 3 times. They have recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with the names who brought up untimely deaths and the child abuses, intercampuses connected. Other natures of predicate acts and murders were involved at the same time. Intercities too, and uses of confessions. Distinctly from how the church uses confessions. Distinctly from how the breaching method before the church uses confessions. Distinctly from how the breaching method uses confessions, partially how our government does. Criminally foreign influence, use of truces for lies already, collusions, keep uses of words like data, research, defenses that can't defend themselves and afford to protract, convictions that are proper and capable of being by per uses of truth and the revelations that come with revelations, like where we constantly have the same color eyes / different color eyes. All exception nature on demonstration of the same thing / S. Vaccines, I taught best. You guys have to follow mandated law. That's why. See, they're controlling the news cycle with the intelligence community from off their locations, from the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News. Our roles with their wire crime acts and methods that are not as bad as the predicate acts of WTNH and WFSB people. We have to keep it on the people involved. So we don't have to hurt. In other words, so we can get to the former director of the FBI, Robert Lusk, and his co-defendants are also involved with criminally foreign influence of those locations and the ones next to it. They're leaking this by not providing writing. I asked many times for Judge Napolitano to get the Connecticut Interbranch onto paper. They made confessions. They switched names. Since I was a kid, they've been putting fake things into their databases as collusions at crime scenes, including the campuses as crime scenes, and attaching kids to fake ties and nature of the ties. They're just putting written fake things, fake audio and video on campuses, filmed 24/7, like Central Connecticut State University. They communicated that they have the deans and their family members. They have their professors and their family members influenced to hide the intelligence community from on, but also off, never stop being on them, from off them, but also never stop being on them, influenced to put fake things in databases. Speak about that, not speak about it. Hide, put fake motivations for that too. Ugh. But these are people in New Britain, Connecticut, who have roles with names intercities, Rocky Hill campuses, and Weathersfield campuses further have names with roles with the names. Who time where I was going to be, tricked me to be in a location around there, and then pretend we had communications that never were. Something to do with the people further pretending passions and emotions from distances, yelling things out. A guy, people with the name Luigi Guerrera and tied to him. I don't know him. They were the ones with Central Connecticut State University has women in his family involved with Rocky Hill campuses, as the ones further involved with people with the name Officer McGee, who've been switching names on falsified police reports and made confessions tied to that, for how they make confessions too. The intelligence on off the places. Hartford Hospital is one of the all the medical locations have roles with the directions of what they're supposed to do with their orders and stuff. That's all criminally foreign influence. Our Weathersfield police have families through time increasingly criminally foreign influence since they were kids. Identity theft, frauds, little lies about themselves and others because you guys grew up with other communicated for our founders. Then they ask communicated while others communicated for nature, then they ask communicated. That means our founders as Native Americans. Native Americans are a portion of our founders, a third of our founders. A portion is the founders that had the counteracts with the other founders, and that's the other third portion. See president/chief this way. Many pray. See it as all fours to be systems individually grouped together, and to entertain systems individually grouped together. Tactile terrier from the hypernative one that shows us the only increasing value of Native Americans. And that means the value of it where we are quality is factual nature, quality aspects of nature. See, but the applications of difference would have came to this, but you guys are systems other, the hypernative ground below the feet of people A through Z is tactically denatured. To force mass farming needed, not just to force mass farming needed, to force systems tactical ulterior from the one that nature communicates through. The way it is used, stayed others ourselves, blame for where and how its communications is prevented. Free speech is prevented. Innumerable rights are prevented. People want to have debates about who knows what's logic. See that guy from Schumer with his hands in his pocket from New York? That's sick. He came through 6 schools. Here. Follow mandated law in New York with Connecticut too. While you guys wait, with Weathersfield police, get them on paper, one name in sequence. Don't pretend it's personal, punks. Get one name in sequence. And Rocky Hill police, you have people involved with this. Now stop leaking and get on paper now. Now. In other words, a whole bunch of people names tied to this name. Phil Colol too with this writing forensics. Middletown has roles with with the families on Covington Street and the conjunctions to it, and the other streets where with like Gary Sassa, he's one of the ones associated with Gail King with predicate acts and with medical offenders and child involved with child abusers and people involved with the Department of Children and Families as collusions were also applied are those tight natures of collusions where the intelligence community that counts as intelligence community. That, in other words, not the three branches of government, but as them, and how they have mixed. They have roles with the leaders of the prisons and their kids who have roles with criminally foreign influence uses of planting evidences, fake ties, fake natures of ties to people. Investigators never stop being used remotely criminally foreign influence. It's something to do with the names next to the hospitals too. Involved with like prostitution, involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. No, even if it's military and they're unmarked police forms or what, they have roles with the black-white themed intercultural and intracultural identity theft, fraud, slanders clearer than day. What we need to talk about. So get them on paper, one name and sequence. A whole bunch of people with the name Lombardo also involved with medical families, planting evidences on off campuses, fake uses of drugs and alcohol by kids. And you know, they're not making the differences between drugs because they have these are people with prosecutors and judges keeping the best quality of marijuana, which is the only drug that people would want, but they're keeping the best quality of marijuana to influence the kids to lie about how and why they know other people and their motivations for it. Sometimes the kids are doing it for their own motivations, one or the other, but it's always making it look like there are other motivations because there are foreign bodies involved and their roles with the intelligence community with the kids at each age and the difference between how and why they are intelligence associated with the schools. They're hiding between. They're hiding between they're using their kids offensively to hide between to pretend that's their motivations with logic and on the social media and in the news, and when they keep quiet because they have roles with predicate acts, with facts, with databases, with the logic relative, so should not have to beg to get them on paper, and they use wire crime action methods. So I'm not going to call the police. I can't. They use mail crime methods, so we have to get me from the fake communications with them onto paper, one name and sequence. Follow mandated law for your branch of government. Don't be cowards with the World Trade Center attack and leave all the fakes with passions and emotions pretending them. Oh, I can't believe. Stay on the acts I reported to you. Stay on the sequence shifts in the Ninth Circuit Court with the names on off Central Connecticut State University who had collusions with uses of that since too. There was Officer Magnanos who has roles with predicate acts on my street with Weathersfield Police who are planting evidences with people as one on off Central Connecticut State University. He has male, the family members of his involved with that, and with people with East Hartford locations, with foreign and domestic military. These are people involved. See, now you make it look like even if it's not an intelligence community, there's a stripper place there. Like I don't know the name of it, near Pratt and Whitney, and people that work with UPS involved with it and other shipping locations. And then they don't pretend that's personal either. That's how the agencies keep you guys using your names fake, sick. You're America's. America's supposed to be unabridged. The nature of debate is supposed to be unabridged. No, not forced before court. That's collusion here. It's collusion at locations. It's collusion online. That's what's actually recorded. Don't ignore the value of the simultaneous or the smallest finite detail because it comes with this hyper simultaneous. So a whole bunch of people through time, intercities involved with this Joe Aiello have been identity theft, fraud, slanders with people that live near me, with Weathersfield Police, but they're attaching everyone to fake and changed words and locations and ties and nature ties to each other. This is a game they play. The ones that the intelligence, so ones with the name. There's also ones with the name D. Simone and O'Brien further involved with names brought up by the Wethersfield Police and Whiting Forensics as their collusions with the child offenders. They also have collusions through time with people associated with the Witness Protection Program and other natures of criminal enterprises. And their grammar school teachers and middle school teachers attaching kids not even in their classes to slanders, their identity thefts and frauds against lies about themselves and about others. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Let's go. The campuses too. Let's go. More people tied to this Judge Emmett. I mean, this Mr. I believe it's a Michael Emmett associated with Whiting Forensics. When I was a kid, there were people with Whiting Forensics also involved with child offenders, leaders, and kids, and body dumping spots tied. Well, the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed on Facebook by people with the name Fienza and tied to them. They have roles next to the state judicial branch offices and on Elm Streets in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, with predicate acts with people with the intelligence next to Fox Connecticut News and next to WFSB. These are also people roles with war crimes acts and methods with the FBI, which is next to WTNH, who fabricated emails with them. And they stole all these poems I wrote to a girl, and they lied to her about me. And they did that since I was a kid. They had a whole bunch of people tied to a Joshua Stryker and a Joshua Julian involved with identity theft, illusions with the people with the relative murders and body dumping spots. And their roles with the girl who got dragged to her death and or the narrative about it in the news. And her ties to the ones at Hartford Hospital. And that was from spot next to Hartford Hospital. She was dragged to her death. A whole bunch of people tied to the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and people from other countries, military, German military, Kuwaiti military, involved with a Kolvenskis, with people all along Walker Hill and Route 175 with identity theft, fraud, slanders. They take a picture of you walking next to them. They pretend that you knew them. I went with, let's go hiking with us. I went hiking with them one time. Well, I remember I said in the thing too. What is it? Years before it was Seinfeld, I said, what is it? Festivus, a holiday for the rest of us. These people are involved with the ones with the name O'Brien and their roles with Bart Hampstead and people with Koreans there too. Has something to do with their roles with police chiefs from Hartford, through time retired, involved with child offenders, including sexual and medical, including with judges. So follow mandated law for the people speaking for a reason. It is time, Black people, see the whites of eyes. Here! Prepare. Thank you. Make sure I'm heard. Make sure they get on paper. Judge Napolitano, please. You guys have guns and violence and knives and identity thefts and frauds, collusions with the ones with the courts, pretending passions and emotions. Since I was a kid, the people on Covington Street have been sequence shifting with the names with identity thefts and frauds on my street. Put it out there. Now you have a bunch of little victim predators, hyper victim, hyper predators. They also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with that as their roles with people on Zion Street in Hartford, and their roles with the names and as names on off the state corrections offices and the spots next to it involved. Note the stories on the people with street takeovers and how it started with it at a spot near the state corrections offices. These are people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. A whole bunch of people tied to the names Cololo and DeMorrow. There's a DeMorrow's Market in Rocky Hill, and it used to be next to Hartford Hospital. They also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed their roles with the Joe Aiello, planting evidences with courts and prosecutors and overt criminal enterprises and child offenders, sexual and medical at the same time. Identity theft, fraud, slanders with people at spots next to the news locations and interreligious. While their tactically delusions raw, I never had a class with Joe DeMorrow in my life, by the way. I never had a class with Heather Hansen. And and they made the fake exceptions. And I never had a class through from, from all the way up until high school with a regular law. And by the time I had a class with him, he was already recorded, involved with predicate acts with the people planting fake things and identity thefts and frauds. From behind my back, other classes never saw him around the middle school. They made one quick exception. I saw Joe tomorrow. I just remember that he's involved with a whole bunch of people from Central Connecticut State University, involved with the Mr. Peruzzi. And they pretend to test people or what? Off campus, on campus, but they're lying about their motivations and their collusions with the medical offenders associated with this with kids and whiting forensics, with child sex offenders and medical offenders and criminal enterprises associated with Mayor Gold and people associated with him, planting evidences next to parks through time. Fake ties, fake nature ties to people, but by doing tricks and have other people take pictures of it. People associated with the FBI Director Luskin have roles with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. The victims advocates, their lawyers, and the interbranch, switching and forging names, putting fake sequences and collusions with things in the databases with foreign bodies. Their families' roles with the predicate acts methods on and off the campus is connected is important. So you should say sorry to the deans and the principals. You should not try to hide behind, make them make opinions about things. You understand what I said. Make them get on paper with the rest of the confessions and recorded things I caught them doing with the Mr. Emmett in the whiting forensics with child offenders, including sexual and medical at the same time, though, as the ones mixed with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and increasingly timed uses of roles with names associated with the witness protection program, all sides of it. I'd fear God. And what are they doing with this Joshua Stryker involved, and the people with the corner of Fairlane and Griswold has something to do with Eric Klotz, involved with Central Connecticut State University confessions, and this Joshua Stryker and others tied to judges involved with the name Kalal, also involved with that corner with the witness protection program and the other criminal enterprises involved. Their roles with other countries, generals and stuff. We're a little fake. Get them on paper. Don't make me beg. And don't play games. Pretend with investigation, investigate anymore. Say sorry to Judge Napolitano too.